Who will share a tale?
Ooh, I have something right here.
Reef sails! Is there a sea scold among you?
Okay, over here.
Get the mast up!
Maybe I wouldn't be the only one to notice this if you didn't.
Full sail!
Come on, darling, you teach teenagers, channel your patience.
Hey! Hold here!
Hey, would you look at that? As many of you are aware, I've been digging up historical inspirations for Valhalla's characters and central themes, and have been uncovering a wealth of historical connections that lead to a more enjoyable, authentic, and immersive experience. And as with most forms of media, the research is often found in the details. As Dr. Ford would say,
they come back because of the subtleties.
Many have already pointed out a few of the translatable ruins, references to Norse mythology in the open world, and historical locations. But I was sailing in the longship the other day and noticed something equally fascinating. Choosing to listen to the stories on the longship, I thought I heard the name Egil, and as it turns out, I actually did. I've been brushing up on some of my Vikings history, and I've been trying to dive deeper into the many Icelandic sagas, as they contain a good deal of what we know about Old Norse culture. It's been a pretty light read, goes down as transparently as an Instagram travel blog. No big deal, just reading in my spare time between grading and lesson planning. Yeah, this is some of the most challenging stuff I've ever read. Ever. I'm not embarrassed to admit that. Well, since I challenged myself to read the Romance of the Three Kingdoms while playing Total War Three Kingdoms a few months ago, and I totally limped through the first 150 pages of that as well.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, I liked it. Anyway, it was romantic. It was bromantic. That's right.
Before telling myself I'll come back to it. Anyway, like I said, these stories, even with access to Google and Reddit, are not for the casual Tolkien fans or Witcher bros. I frequently have no idea who is who, or what talents or abilities people possess, not to mention the constant trouble in trying to orient myself between the names of characters and the names of places. So, brace yourselves, I'm going to attempt anyways to pronounce some of these names with my Boston accent.
Okay, so far this sounds nothing like Icelandic. I did hear.
And there's a lot of poetry sometimes out of absolute nowhere. And, wait for it, none of it rhymes. Which doesn't really matter though. The poetry parts are some of the most fascinating to read though, and the most popular ones are pretty easy to find online with some cliff notes. I mean, hey, underneath this cold, test-giving, titan-slaying, gaming heart is a softie. What can I say? The poetry is pretty good. Most of my experience with these sagas has been reading Egil's Saga, one of the most popular sagas, but also one of the strangest. From what I've been able to digest so far, Egil Skallagrimsson is a warrior poet, ruin master, anti-hero who adventures from Iceland, England, and Norway in the late 9th through 11th centuries. His saga is told in a very episodic kind of literature, where the events of one chapter rarely, if ever at all, build to any grand, overarching, rising action kind of story. So most sagas actually do read like this. I checked in a couple, which makes things a lot easier when I go to give my students a modified translation about 50 chapters in. Based on that brief introduction to the sagas, you'd probably expect me to make connections to Valhalla's main character, Eivor, who may have been inspired by Egil. Both are similarly courageous, are obsessed with their reputation, and frequently let the poetry flow through them. But anti-hero is where we gotta draw the line. Yeah, Eivor can be a bit of a Batman sometimes if you want to go that direction, but by our standards today, Egil is much closer to the Joker. He's an extremely unlikable, unreasonable, and cruel character who frequently commits atrocities, for the clout. I'm not kidding. I was barely a few pages in, and young Egil brutally murders a kid for beating him in a wrestling match. He bullies people, threatens to kill, and often does kill people over trivial matters. He basically treats other characters the way that the guests treat the hosts in Westworld. Okay, so what's going on here? Is this a window into a Viking version of a hero, a sociopath, or like are we meant to sympathize with this flawed character? No, not really, none of the above. Though Egil occasionally tries to have redemptive moments, Egil's Saga was the Game of Thrones of its day. It often tosses character personalities out of the window for the benefit of telling an engaging, edgy story. And no, it's not that I just misread character development. There really isn't any. Readers just have to accept that actions and motivations are often contradictory, and then deal with it. Remember, people, these are stories that originated from the oral tradition, where storytellers tried to entertain audiences in front of a campfire. I mean, think about the stories that you often share with your friends. Do they always have a happy ending, or are they always about historic deeds? Sometimes the unhinged, crazy ones are the most interesting. Back to the point. I'm bringing up all of this because Egil's Saga is actually in Valhalla, and not just in the inspired by themes kind of way. This part is around chapter 40-ish in Egil's Saga, and to be honest, it's a pretty rock-solid summary of what happens. Egil escapes capture, along with a few other dudes, steals a sword on his way out, and realizes it's wrong to commit such an act without boasting and taking credit for it. So, on his way back to the farm, which he also burns down by the way, Egil shouts his name back.
Remember, this is the day that you almost caught Captain Jack Sparrow.
Yeah, kind of like that. Aside from this being true to its source material, I found this to be a great example of Norse values regarding reputation, which is a great takeaway for a gamer to have. It shows just how well the writers understand the key elements of the sagas and that they desire to convey those core messages to their audience. Finding this effectively got me rolling and researching a few databases to see if there were any other sagas that made their way into the sailing stories. Sure enough, I think I found another one. There's a reference to a competition with the poet Sarcastic Hallie, and that competition ending with vomiting, because, you know, that was hilarious back then. I checked this, and I found a similar short story that matched up pretty well, which is a bold choice, because Viking humor and our humor today are like boomers trying to understand dank memes. Still, I hope people can appreciate this effort when put into a cultural context. Effort is what I want to end on today, because while it's looking like many of the short stories were pulled from the Icelandic sagas, it's a bit disappointing to know that most people will miss this entirely because of how frustrating the stopping and starting nonsense is. God of War did something similar with stories from the Prose Edda, with Mimir telling stories and Kratos and Atreus jumping in with some cool discussions and dialogue back and forth every now and again, all with minimal interruption. But hey, the Prose Edda is The Hobbit compared to some of the short stories Valhallas are based off of. That's all I have for now. I'm calling this episode 1, though, based on a few more hidden surprises that I think I've found elsewhere in the game. Just needed to do a little bit more research. Hopefully I can look into different features in previous or future entries in the series. Let me know if you found anything worth looking into, or if you'd like me to cover more history that's layered deep within these games. In the meantime, make sure to like
All sail!
Okay, alright.